on there. There we go. I am in a hotel in Emmitsburg. And we are on day 11. Okay, so there we go. Now people are starting, the YouTubers are out. Okay, so Facebook is quiet. That might be why it didn't go up, but YouTube, it looks like you are live. So let's go ahead and get started. I really liked today's. Today's catchphrase or keynote, I guess, is the long play. So do you know what that is? Like the long play is, it's not an album necessarily, but it's a little too much for just a regular song. So the long play is just this when it's really good and it's more than just a song. And so Pastor Dean out of Ohio at Life Point Church is sharing with us today that we need to see life as the long play, like more than that, like eternity. And do we instead think of it like a single? And I get this because I was thinking to myself, the times that I really have gotten stressed out, overwhelmed, just like not performing well as a Christian, right? Hopeless, right? Are those times when I saw life that way, when I saw life as like the here and now, and that's all there is to it. You can easily get into a desperate place. So maybe you're worried about something, and literally your focus is so much on right now, and your wheels are turning and going to all those scary places. But that's because you don't see, or I didn't, looking back, or people don't see life as this really long play. And that God is working and orchestrating things far beyond anything we can think of. So in those desperate times, we maybe feel like it's got to get fixed now. You know, we're so stressed or worried. But if we could just see our life in a month, in 2 years, in 5 years, everything could be different. And how fragile we are. You know, you think of the story with the seeds, right? In the parable where Jesus talks about, you know, the seeds that are in weak, fertile, or weak, they're like in the thorns, or maybe they're in the cement, the little bit of dirt that's in between the cement, or maybe they're in deep, rich soil. Like, I feel like that's what this lesson is about, is those times where I wasn't really leaning deeply, planting myself deeply in this rich soil of God, and knowing that He is able to do it all. He's able to carry us through things. And so getting ourselves out of this like single place, the single-minded, I'm going to put it on comments so that I can see. So there we go. All right. So there's a few key points. It's only supposed to be 10 minutes. So I got to get going. I'm getting into my story, right? So his stuff, he says, there's too much focus on the here and now. Your destination is more important than your today. Like, thinking about that, your destination, like when we're in those desperate times and we're worried or we're scared or whatever, you know, are we desperate? And how, you know, why are we not thinking about like the long haul? Why are we not dreaming for later? Okay. And then also the tricky part of this, so this thinking is that we sometimes respond to God and how God's with us or not with us today, versus thinking about other times. Like, we can lean on our past or on other people to see, wait a minute, I was worried about graduating through college. No, for me, I was worried about ever being able to read, right? And then here I wrote books later. But that was 5 years, and I did lean on God. I was worried that in high school, remembering thinking, gosh, I'm going to choose the degree that gave me this is how I ended up in nursing. This is a real story. I looked across this little tool that our guidance counselor gave us, and it was like, the least amount of school. So back then you could be a registered nurse in 2.5 years or something. So the least amount of school and the most amount of money, that's what I'll be. I literally landed in my calling, but that is God watching out for me, right? But I did it because I just knew that, oh gosh, I'm going to struggle. It's going to be hard for me. Like, I barely had 4 years of good reading under my belt by the time I went to nursing school. So, but if I was living in that time and focused only on that, Now I can look back in hard times and remember how God orchestrated everything. And that's like leaning on faith that you have from history. And we need to think about that moving forward. So whatever situation you might be in right now that maybe seems desperate, we have to lean into the long play. We have to think to ourselves, wait a minute, I am deeply rooted. I am not this little seed that's like just laying on, ready to blow away in the wind. I am with God. I am deeply rooted and I have all this help, and he is going to get me through all of this. You lean in that hope. Okay, so let me keep going. His wife's grandfather was a great man. And the story that he shared was pretty powerful. And granted, I did read this a few days ago, and right before my kid's grandma passed away. So I've got a lot on my mind. But I think what happened was that he was in the war. He had also written a book. And if I have the story all off, see, you need to go get the book. And I'm giving another one away today, by the way. But anyway, so this gentleman went back and did a mission project, and he was like compelled to like just reach out to the soldiers because he had been in the war. So he was visiting the soldiers with his wife, came across one, ended up that this soldier knew of the book that the grandfather wrote, and that it saved him and that it led his whole family to Christ. Like, that's the long play, right? I was thinking to myself, wow, I have this discipleship series book. Can I ever imagine being an old person on a mission trip in another country and someone saying, I know your book, right? Can you imagine? But we don't understand today. We have to lean into this great plan that God has for each and every one of us. Okay, so then next is these 4 bullets that I put out of his notes. One was, we get this because we respond. These are the ways that we can act when we're living in today, just worried about today, and we're not thinking of this long play. We respond irrationally, and it makes sense. Hi, Leslie, nice seeing you. It does make sense. Like, if you're worried about your child or I always say child because I have grandchild now, and my adult children that I have no control over anymore. But like, if you're worried about your child or your finances or an illness, and you have just today to figure it out, you're going to be a stressed out mess. But if you realize that you have the power of the Trinity, right? You have great power. If you really stop and think about that and how much he's done for you in the past over months, weeks, years, and how much he can do for you, lean into the long play, right? The second one is we respond to desperation. We respond with desperation. That's how we can know, mental check, mind check, are we living in the now? And are we sort of focused only on the now if we're responding with desperation? And desperation isn't bad, but then give it away. Don't live in desperation. Like, if you feel it, quickly drop down on your knees, give it to God, and then let him have it. He will. It may take a while, but he will take care of it. And then also, if we respond in defeat, like a lot of times that's what happens to us. If we're not living for the long play, we have a challenge, and instead of it making us persevere and get character and build strength and start to be able to elevate through our walk with God, we end up saying, there's no way I can do this. I'm out. We're defeated. But that's because we would be out today. If it had to be done today, and if it had to be done with just you, we would be out. Well, that's why we have Jesus. That's why we have the Trinity. So the long play, right? And then we'd have to think of the story of the farmers. So yeah, I told a little story about, your seed getting blown away or being in the roots or whatever, but think of the planting. Like, the farmers are the best examples of long play. They get it. They get that, they just have to do what they know is right. Bible. Do what you know is true and right. And how can you imagine trying to be a farmer and having no experience as a farmer, having nothing in your blood as a farmer, and not investigating anything and just going out and planting a crop, right? Crazy. We have to know what the word says. It's great when we have heritage of believers around us, and we have to do the work, right? And so you need to be like a farmer. And so you get your education through the word and your wise counsel and your community of believers. You do your planting. So now you got to do the work. Like you can't just learn something once. You still have to, as the weathermen do, they still look at the weather forecast. They still decide, okay, last year I planted this, I switched crops this year, whatever. So you have to stay and continue to learn. This is how you have an amazing crop in the future, the long play, right? Okay, so now for your homework. First, number one, get out your journals. Number one is vision for 10 years. We want you to like write down your vision. What do you think your dream, your long play gift is going to be after 10 years? Okay, then next is what's it going to be after 20 years? Okay, now what's your vision for today? Then how do you want, now that's what's really, really great is to stop there and sort of do a mental check. Like, okay, was God part of that? Or was it just like, I want to retire and I want to do all these things? My husband and I just did that. We just sat down and we're like, okay, now let's look how close we are. How well do we have that set? So now you want to look at number 4. It says, well, how do you want your relationship with God to look in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? How do you want your marriage to look? How do you want your kids to look? You got to do the long play. You got to be the Christian farmer, right? And you got to do the work, plant and nourish this, get into the light and get some fertilization and all this stuff, right? So now I want you guys to see life in the long play with eternity. It's the crop and the benefit is going to be so much better even when we're done. I am here for my mother-in-law's funeral and she has made it to long play, right? Like I can't imagine where she's at right now. How awesome. All right. So we're done. Go live, love, learn, and lead according to the call God has on your life.